Hello again. Remember, my name is Anne Jardin, and I am a professor for the Center of Exploration and Production at AFP School. During a previous session, I explained how to study the petroleum system to evaluate the hydrocarbon potential of the basin. In this sequence, we'll see how the seismic method is applied to obtain subsurface images and how exploration wells are drilled to check hydrocarbon discovery. I hope you remember that in the previous session, a petroleum system was defined as a set of geological and fluid factors, such as reservoir and traps, that make the accumulation of oil and gas possible. So, the basin is promising. Geologists have selected a zone for which they obtain mining rights to begin the exploration. Now, geologists must more accurately investigate the potential reservoirs, called prospects, and check the presence of hydrocarbons using seismic imaging and well drilling. The seismic method is the most frequently applied geophysical method for petroleum exploration studies. The main objectives of seismic exploration are to obtain an image of the subsurface, locate the prospects, and propose well locations. To obtain a realistic image of the subsurface, the seismic workflow is usually developed in three main steps: acquisition, processing, and interpretation. During the acquisition step, downgoing waves are generated by seismic sources located at the surface. The waves propagate through the subsurface and are reflected by reflectors, which are interfaces separating two different geological formations, for example, reservoir and seal. After reflection, the upgoing reflected waves travel through geological formations until they reach the surface when receivers record the vibrations. In the case of land seismic acquisition, big trucks, called vibrators, generate seismic energy that propagates through the subsurface. You can see a picture of 5 vibrators during a seismic acquisition survey in the French Alps. The receivers, called geophones, record the stress variations due to seismic vibrations. In the case of marine seismic acquisition, both sources and receivers are dragged behind special vessels close to the sea surface. Seismic energy is provided by air explosions in the water caused by air guns. The pressure variations transmitted by the water are recorded by several lines of hydrophone sets, what we call a spread. This spread can be several kilometers long and several kilometers wide. At this step, each seismic trace is a set of signal amplitudes, ordered by recording times. These times represent the successive travel times required by the seismic wave to travel from one source to one receiver after successive reflections on deeply buried interfaces. At the end of the acquisition survey, geophysicists have acquired a huge amount of data. It can be several millions of seismic traces gathered by choke points. Recognizing geological features directly from this data is really impossible. That's why geophysicists have developed seismic processing techniques to translate all these seismic traces into 2D or 3D seismic images, with the aim of representing a realistic subsurface geology. Seismic image building is a long process from several days to several months, which requires efficient data management. The first processing step is to stack all the traces reaching the reflector at the same point. It's done to improve the sharp contrast on the picture. Seismic reflections are usually displayed in various colors, enhancing the limits between geological formations. As you can see on this image, a more obvious geological texture is now more visible and begins to mimic geological features. After this stacking process, migration processing is applied to eliminate the distortion effects due to geological structures. These anomalies are called diffractions and are generated when the seismic waves pass by the edge of an obstacle, such as faults, and are deviated. You can clearly see the improvement of the image in the central yellow part. Noise generated by faults are removed, and reflector discontinuities are more visible. Until now, the vertical coordinates of the seismic images are always the two-way travel times, which are the times taken by the seismic waves to travel from the source to the receiver. Obviously, time data cannot be used to locate the position of a reservoir. We need to convert seismic data to another dimension. This is done through time-to-depth conversion processing. The conversion of seismic images from the time acquisition domain into the depth interpretation domain is essential to continue the exploration process. The geophysicist has now obtained the best seismic image ready to be interpreted by the geologist. Firstly, the geologist identified and picked the main reflections, which are the interfaces separating two different geological formations. Then, the geologist identified the main faults, which have broken sediments and have interrupted the reflection continuity. Three main faults are clearly visible in the central part of this section seismic image. Identifying faults is really important because faults could serve as hydrocarbon traps or be the cause of fluid leaks. The result of seismic interpretation is a model describing the geology. On this image, the different types of sediments with specific velocity values are clearly visible. We distinguish shallow parallel layers broken by faults in the upper part of the image and a large anticline in the lower part of this image. A high velocity layer, shown in red, separates this upper part from the lower part. Based on the seismic image and the geological model, a potential reservoir trapped in the anticline structure can now be located in this target zone at a depth of 2.5 kilometers. A potential reservoir is now accurately located, but only by looking at these images, it is impossible to check if this formation is filled with oil or gas. Drilling a well to reach the potential reservoir is the only way to be sure of the presence of fluid inside the rock, which could be oil or gas, but also water. To answer this question, geologists and geophysicists must decide to drill an exploration well. The objective of this well are not only to ascertain that hydrocarbons are present, but also to recover a lot of data, especially in underexplored areas. Geologists conduct direct observation from rock samples taken during the drilling of the well, such as cuttings and cores. During and after the drilling, specific measures, called well logs, are acquired by tools lowered into the well. Interpretation of well logs gives a lot of information about reservoir rock properties. To obtain fluid properties, fluid samples are taken during well tests. Other measures, such as initial pressure and evaluation of the permeability within the reservoir, are also obtained during well testing. An exploration well could be a success if a hydrocarbon reservoir is discovered or a failure. The failure case is when either no hydrocarbons are discovered or when there are insufficient hydrocarbon accumulations to be exploited economically. In the failure case, the exploration well will be abandoned and plugged. If sufficient hydrocarbon accumulation is estimated, an exploration well becomes a discovery well. Other wells, called appraisal wells, are drilled to acquire additional data and assess the characteristics of the proven hydrocarbon accumulation. Drilling exploration well is very risky, and probabilities of success vary from 60% for long-time explored basins to 10% in new explored zones. To discover a commercial amount of oil and gas accumulations with a limited number of wells remains a challenge. In our workflow, several years have been necessary to obtain a 3D view of the subsurface, interpret the images, locate potential reservoirs, and drill exploration wells. One discovery has been confirmed. The challenge for hydrocarbon exploration will continue with reservoir characterization studies. So that's all from me for the moment. I'll see you again in the next session on reservoir characterization.